Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Military operations against the formidable Confederate defenses of the Mississippi River city of Port Hudson in 1863 are remembered as a particularly low point for U.S. troops. The 6-week siege from May 21st to July 9th of 1863 was marked by two major Union assaults that were repulsed with heavy losses by the well-entrenched and stalwart Confederate defenders. That first assault on May 27th involved about 30,000 Union troops with support from gunboats in the Mississippi River against the garrison of about 7,500 Confederates. It failed miserably with 3,200 approximate casualties on the Union side. That second assault on June 14th, a little more than 2 weeks later, ended with another loss and the casualty list growing by another about 1,800 men. It's a lot of men in two separate assaults. The Union general who ordered those assaults, Nathaniel P. Banks, he decided to try it a third time. The day following that second assault, June 15th, he issued an order to the Army, General Order 49, and it contained a rather bold request, along with congratulations. I want to read the order to you so you can get the primary source, right from the primary source, right from Banks's brain to ours. So General Order number 49, it's a byline, the headquarters, Department of the Gulf, 19th Army Corps, before Port Hudson, June 15th, 1863. The commanding general congratulates the troops before Port Hudson upon the steady advance made upon the enemy's works, and is confident of an immediate and triumphant issue of the contest. We are at all points upon the threshold of his fortifications. One more advance, and they are ours. For the last duty that victory imposes, the commanding general summons the bold men of the Corps to the organization of a storming column of 1,000 men to vindicate the flag of the Union and the memory of its defenders who have fallen. Let them come forward. Officers who lead the column of victory in this last assault may be assured of the just recognition of their services by promotion, and every officer and soldier who shares its perils and its glory shall receive a medal fit to commemorate the first grand success of the campaign of 1863 for the freedom of Mississippi. His name will be placed in general orders upon the roll of honor. Division commanders will at once report the names of the officers and men who may volunteer for the service in order that the organization of the column may be completed without delay by command of Major General Banks, signed by Assistant Adjutant General Richard B. Irvin. That order written by Banks, that strongly worded, bold order, thanking everyone for what they did and encouraging to give it one more go, it was well received. 1,036, that's 36 more than the required number, stepped forward, and they formed two battalions of what became known as the Special Assault Regiment. I want to pause here and ask a question. What makes a soldier volunteer for what is very likely to be a suicide mission? Courage, patriotism, belief of being on the right side of history, having that sense of selflessness to put cause and comrades ahead of your own life. Any and all of those motivations are very possible the esprit de corps that brought these men together and took them through not only one deadly assault, but two deadly assaults. There's that too, as Banks alludes to, or not alludes, he actually says it straight up in his general order. We've been through this together. One more charge and we have him. We're this close to breaking the defenses of Port Hudson. So who were these 1,036 men who stood up to get involved in what amounts to a suicide mission, or what was known at the time as a forlorn hope? That's the Civil War vernacular for this kind of a mission. Well, here's one of them. His name is Captain Francis Everett Boyd, and he was assigned to command one of the companies in the 2nd Battalion of that Special Assault Regiment. If you look back at his history, he was born in Boston to a family of Scottish descent, began his military service in early 1862, not among the first to sign up, but he came in that second wave and is a second lieutenant in the 1st Battalion, Massachusetts Heavy Artillery. In fact, he's pictured here at about the time he mustered in 1862. His Company A was destined not for the South, but for guard duty in Boston Harbor. But in 1862, late 1862, he left the battalion and joined the newly formed 41st Massachusetts Mounted Infantry with a captain's commission. This was going to be more active duty, and this is perhaps a clue to his character. He didn't want to hang out in Boston for any chunk of the war. He was interested in going south to the war front. And he was. The 41st was ordered to Louisiana, and the regiment participated in operations around Baton Rouge and New Orleans before joining the larger forces to participate in the Port Hudson campaign. Now, Boyd and the 41st were not involved in the first or the second assaults, but they were very aware of the failures and the risks that were associated with that third assault. And when time came to launch that third assault, General Banks had everything he needed. He had put out General Order 49. He had recruited all the men, all 1,036. They had formed battalions. They were ready to go. But in the end, Banks decided not to proceed. In doing so, Banks likely saved many lives. He may have even saved Boyd's life. However, it's important to recognize that this doesn't diminish the courage of Boyd and those other men. They volunteered without the knowledge that they would be going into into the battle, in which was essentially that suicide mission, that forlorn hope. The siege might not have gone on indefinitely. It might have lasted for who knows how long. But the fall of Vicksburg on July 4th to the National Forces of Ulysses S. Grant made Port Hudson's defense untenable, compelling the Confederate commander, Franklin Gardner, to surrender the garrison. So Port Hudson did not go without that third assault. It was really Grant and Vicksburg that made Port Hudson finally surrender. Boyd continued on in the Army less than a year later during another failed Banks campaign, the Red River in Louisiana, during the Battle of Sabine Crossroads, also known as the Battle of Mansfield. Well, Boyd was there. At that time, he had joined the 3rd Massachusetts Cavalry, which was really a consolidation of the 41st and other units. And in that battle, Boyd suffered a wound, an arm wound. He was part of the casualty list that included 9 killed, 64 wounded in the regiment, and 157 horses. It's a Confederate victory. That arm wound eventually healed. In late 1864, Boyd left the cavalry and became major of the 4th Massachusetts Heavy Artillery. He spent the rest of the war in the defenses of Washington. In March 1865, at the tail end of the war, Boyd received a brevet rank. It's an honorary rank as lieutenant colonel for, you guessed it, gallant conduct at Port Hudson. At the conclusion of his war service, Boyd is connected to two very different business enterprises. In 1869, he filed a patent for improvements to a breech-loading rifle, perhaps inspired by the Sharps carbines carried by his men in the 3rd Cavalry. He became a partner in the Boston-based Boyd Breech-Loading Arms Company. The firm was short-lived, operating from 1870 to 1872. Then in the 1890s, he had moved out west and served as secretary of the Surface Creek Ditch and Reservoir Company. That was in Colorado. The firm was responsible for a number of man-made lakes to provide fresh water to settlers. His career, his life ends about 1923 when he and his wife purchased a bungalow in St. Cloud, Florida. At that point, his name disappears from the records. So thanks for listening to the story of Captain Boyd and the 1,036 volunteers for the 3rd assault that never happened at Port Hudson. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.